chapter 12, verse 2. This is the fourth covenant that we're looking at. Verse 2 says, "And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, curse them that curseth thee, and in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed." So here we have the Abrahamic covenant. And here we have three main elements to this one. First of all, we see that God promises Abraham a great nation in verse 2. Of course, if we go through the timeline and his lineage, we see that Abraham is going to father Isaac, who in then turn fathers Jacob, who becomes Israel. We see that in Genesis 35, verse 10. We see that Jacob and his descendants are promised everlasting possession of the land. We see that in Genesis chapter 17, verses 7 through 8. And this everlasting covenant is given to Jacob in also Genesis chapter 17 and verse 7. And it says, "And to whom God said, I will be their God," in Genesis chapter 17 and verse 8. So we see God promises Abraham a very great nation. Abraham has also promised that he would father other nations to fulfill that are fulfilled through Ishmael and Esau. And of course, conflicts of those can be seen still even today. Second of all, we see four personal promises are given to Abraham. First of all, he's going to be the father of numerous descendants, and we can see that in Genesis chapter 15 through 19. God promises that he will bless Sarah and give her a son, who we know as Isaac. He shall be the mother of nations. Kings of people shall be of her. We see Isaac is important because that is whom the line of Christ will run. And we see that as another promise. But what about Ishmael? Yes, he was a son of Abraham, but he wasn't a blood son of Sarah. So God's going to bless Ishmael, but God says that his covenant will be with Isaac. And we see that in Genesis chapter 17, verses 20 through 21. Isaac, of course, fathers Jacob and Esau, and Jacob, of course, becomes Israel, as we've seen. And then we see that Abraham is promised personal blessing. He says, "I will bless thee." And it's fulfilled in two ways. First of all, it's fulfilled temporally or worldly. We see in Genesis 13, 14 through 15, 17, 15, verse 18, and in chapter 24, 34 through 35. We see the land is given, and the boundaries are set. We can go back and we can study that out, but it's from the river of Egypt. It's not the Nile, but a small stream south of Gaza known as Wadi El Arish. We can see that in Numbers 34:5, all the way to the river Euphrates. This promise is later confirmed by God to Isaac and Jacob. And so we see that he's promised in this land. Then we see that Abraham is wealthy. In Genesis chapter 24, 34 to 35, God blessed Abraham with flocks, herds, silver, gold, manservants, and maidservants, camels, and donkeys. And so we see Abraham was indeed blessed. So, but when God blesses, he blesses it in great amounts. Not only is Abraham blessed with worldly things, but also spiritually. For you see spiritual blessing in Genesis chapter 15, verse 6, and in John chapter 8, 56. We see Genesis 15:6 says that Abraham believed in the Lord, and he counted it to him for righteousness. This marks the first occurrence of the vital and sole condition of salvation. Man is without righteousness. Our righteousness is filthy rags. And if we are to be just in God's sight, God must put his own righteousness to our account. And so we do that. He does that through what his son did on the cross and through our trust in him. This is where Jesus comes in for us. We couldn't approach God with our own righteousness, so we have to be clothed by his blood of his son, the blood of his son. When we see in Romans 4:3, Abraham believed God and was put to his account. It's faith-based. Abraham believed God, and so must we. We have to believe Jesus was the one and only Son of God, fully man and also fully God, and that he died and rose again, all on faith. Abraham was on faith, and so are we. We see Abraham is to receive personal honor, and we see that God says, "And make thy name great," again in Genesis 12, verse 2. This is fulfilled in recognition by all who honor the Bible. And we see that he's going to be the channel of blessing, and that shall be a blessing, again, in our verse that we read. And this is fulfilled in three ways. First of all, we see him blessings to others through his seed. salvation by faith as well. Then we see the promise to the Gentiles. We have 3 promises there. I will bless them that bless thee. We are blessed as a nation. Free to worship without fear or persecution for now. We're free to do that for now. We are free to do that. We are free to vote in the elections. We're free to do that. There's a lot of nations that aren't free to do that. We're free to criticize the government. We're free to do that. We have all these freedoms. We are blessed as a nation. Why? That's because I believe it's because we have stood with Israel throughout the years.
Yep.
We have supported Israel through thick and thin. And I believe God has blessed us as a nation because of that. Israel is our biggest ally in the Middle East. And so if she needs help, we should be there to support her. Amen? However, I know that in the last days, Israel will stand alone. We can see that starting to be fulfilled today. Even the anti-Semitism that's going around in our nation, we can see that beginning to happen. Our relationship with Israel is probably going to start growing cold before too long. And we can see that, again, in our nation as the anti-Semitism is growing. And so that brings me to the last part of verse 3. It says, I will curse them that curseth thee. How many times have we seen in the Bible when Israel is cursed or threatened by enemies, God intervenes and takes care of business?
That's right.
Amen? He takes care of business. We see Moses and Pharaoh. We see David and Goliath. We see Daniel and the handwriting on the wall. And even in today's world, God is still protecting Israel.
Yep.
He is still protecting. It is still his chosen people. He says, I will and I will. I will bless them that bless thee. We are blessed as a nation. But I will curse thee that curseth them. And so we see that it is a promise. The I wills of God have no end and cannot and will not be broken. The Schofield study that I have says that those who persecute Israel, it has not gone well. And those who honor Abraham and Israel, things get blessed for it. The nation that commits to the sin of anti-Semitism will be will bring inevitable judgment. And so again, we see that creeping into our nation today. And for those who don't know, anti-Semitism is prejudice against, hatred of, or discrimination against Jews as a national, ethnic, religious, or racial group. And so again, we see that and creeping into our own nation today, even in the highest levels of government. And so we see if we can see that again all over the world, from the Philistines, Egypt, to Germany in World War II, Iran and Iraq, again, creeping into our own nation. And so it hasn't worked out for those nations. It probably won't work out for us as a nation. The future will prove this principle over and over again. We see, first of all, in Deuteronomy 30 and verse 7, Isaiah 14, 1 through 2, Joel chapter 3, verses 1 through 8, Micah 5, 7 through 9, Zechariah 14, 1 through 3, Matthew 25, 40, and 45. We see all these things happen as we see, as we go in and as we study. And as we close up, we shall see that all families of the earth will be blessed. This evangelistic promise is fulfilled in Abraham's seed, Christ, and all spiritual seed like Abraham, justified by faith. As a revelation and confirmation of the promise of the Adamic covenant and the seed of the woman. Again, we see that in Genesis chapter 3, the promise of a Redeemer. The Abrahamic covenant reveals God's sovereign purpose to fulfill through Abraham his program for Israel and to provide in Christ the Savior for all who believe. The ultimate fulfillment is made to rest upon the divine promise and the power of God rather than upon human faithfulness. So let's face it, sometimes our faith can be shaky. It can be. Sometimes we'll see something that just shakes us to our core. It happens.